Hi, welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hack-McCarty. For a lot of communities and businesses, after a hurricane hits, there's a lot of debris that's left over, and many times nobody does anything with it. It stays in the ocean, left to disintegrate. One of the things I wanted to explore with Christian Schlebach, who's the founder of Resales, is how he is taking old sails and making something special out of them. It's a great model and a great example of what communities can do, what entrepreneurs can do when they look at a crisis and make an opportunity out of it. So stay tuned. Hey Christian, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for checking in.
So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
I'm South African. I've been living in the US for the past 25 years. Kind of came here on a boat in the early 90s. Never really planned to be an American, but here I am. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. So you have got a company, Resales. Tell us a little bit about the company, how it started, why you founded it, that kind of stuff.
Well, as you know, the marine industry and the sailing industry is pretty wasteful. And I was actually sailing in a regatta in the Caribbean, in Antigua in the early 90s. We were sailing on this boat, and we lost the rig of the boat, and we just cut it away and just sent it into the ocean. And in about 10 foot or 15 foot of water, you could see the sails on the bottom there. And I was like, that day I said to the owner, what are you going to do with those sails? Like, are you, oh, nothing, I'm just going to leave it there. I was like, well, can I go dive them and have them? And he's like, sure, they're yours. Anyway, my background prior to that, I lived in Germany for a year and a half in a little town called Schweich. And I was doing an apprenticeship in a hot air balloon factory, learning how to build hot air balloons because my dad was into it growing up. So I knew how to make stuff, and I knew how to make bags, and I knew how to make snowboard bags, and I knew how to make things because I just finished that apprenticeship. And I was like, listen, I'm going to make some bags out of these sails that I'm going to go dive. My aunt at the time had a little sewing loft in Antigua called Antigua Sails. And I asked her if I could use the machines, and she'd go, sure, go ahead. So I went the next day, got those sails out in a dinghy, went to her loft, and made these little backpacks. It's a little drawstring backpack with a little cinch that you pull tight on the top. Yeah. And I made 10 of them, and I asked the guy whose boat it was if I could put a sign on the helm of his wheel. And if I could say, support the new Mass Fund, buy one of these bags that came from one of these sails that was lost. And I put them up there for $30, thinking nobody's going to buy these things. And I sold all of them within the first hour. And I was like, holy shit, dude. So the next day, I went that night and banged out a very simple bag, I banged out another 40 or 50 of them that night and put the price up to 60. And I sold those ones pretty quickly, not within an hour, but anyway, the gist of the story was like, I was like, hold on, this is cool. This is like something we can do, because every dumpster that you went to, you saw loads and loads of spinnakers that were blown out, just thrown away. I was like, wow, this is good material. It might not be good for sailing, but it's good for something else. Fast forward a year and a half, I was dating this girl, Angela, and we decided I went back to Switzerland. I was working as a snowboard instructor, and I was like sitting in my bed one morning, and I was like, listen, remember that time we were in Antigua and we made those bags? Why don't we do that? And that's kind of how it started. And then we were like, well, what could we call it? And I was like, I think she named it actually. She said, why don't we call it Resales? And I was like, Recycled Sail. That's a good idea. So anyway, we were living in San Diego at the time. I was living with her. And we basically put up some notices around the yacht clubs looking for sales. My aunt in Antigua thought it was a really bad idea that we were going to do this. She didn't think it was going to fly. And I said, well, they flew off the shelf, off the boat in Antigua. Everybody wanted them. But we were more focused on like building a jacket. We made a jacket, and we went back to San Diego, collected some old sails, and cut them up in my living room, and got this guy, Stanley Yang. He was this Chinese guy that was living out there in the sticks, and I had him sew this jacket up, and it came out really great. So then we built like a few more. We didn't have a market to go to. And what happened was Angela was from New York, and she was in PR at the time. She was like, okay, cool. This is what I can do. I'm going to get this stuff sold.
Yeah.
And so she decided, okay, we need to go to the Annapolis Boat Show. And I was like, the Annapolis Boat Show? We're in San Diego. Like, we don't even have anything to sell. The Annapolis Boat Show was in 6 months. And so I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's see what we can build. So we can build a ton of those little backpacks. Let's build a tote bag, and let's try to get some jackets made.
Yeah.
And so we had 3 products. So we then found a little operation to make us the backpacks and the totes. And then this fellow, Stanley, was building us these jackets. So he said at the time. And I cut them out, decorated them, got all the parts together. So we basically assembled everything and then sent it off to these fellows, and they built them. The bags, the backpacks, and the tote bags came back to us great, except they were really expensive to make through a manufacturer. So in other words, like we thought we were going to sell a backpack for $50, and it actually cost us $40 to sew. But we built them, we got them, we had the stock, and we were like, okay, cool, whatever. Stanley was another story. Like, we had 2 weeks to go to the boat show. He'd had these, 25, 30 odd jackets sitting in a box, and he kept telling us, like, they're almost done. So I took a drive out to his place, and they were still in the box. And I was like, Stanley, look, we need the stuff. We've signed up for the Annapolis Boat Show, which is impossible to get into. And he didn't really get it. But anyway, fast forward, Angela worked the Annapolis Boat Show people saying, hey, listen, they didn't have any availabilities. Like, look, we've got this great idea. We're recycling sails. We're turning them into garments. We're doing this stuff. It's great. And they called us back a week later and said, we have a booth for you. And we were like, whoa. So now it was on. We paid them $1,000 for the booth. This is in '96. You know what I mean? This is 25 years ago. And we went to we got Stanley to make the jackets. We had our little stuff, and we got on a plane, and we boxed all this stuff and paid for the oversize. And we get to Annapolis, and we think, okay, cool, we're gonna have a booth, but we didn't know what that meant. That was like, you've got a space. Here's a 10 by 10 in a parking lot. Like, there's no booth. So we then proceeded that day and that night, because the show was starting on a Thursday, and we got there on a Wednesday morning, to go to Home Depot and look for pallets and look for a tent and just piecemeal all the stuff together, and display our wares. I had a little sign that I made, and we were open for business that morning. So the first 2 days of that show were kind of interesting, because it was like the spenders weren't there. They came on a Saturday and a Sunday. So we went through all this stuff, and in the first 2 days, we didn't sell a damn thing. Nothing. We were like, oh, jeez. Like, we put the price at $20 for a backpack. We put the price at $100. So it was like, our shopper wasn't there. Anyway, a long story short, the next 2 days, we sold out of everything. Wow. We sold all 40 backpacks, all 50 totes, and all 30 jackets. We were sold out. We had 10 grand in the bank. You know what I mean? And we were ready to go again. So we went back to San Diego and just started over again. And then eventually, Angela and I actually met in Newport, Rhode Island, where we currently are now. And so we were like, look, if we want to sell this stuff, and this is when the .com was just starting, and my buddy who I surfed with was like, hey, you know what you need to do is you need to build a website. And I was like, a website? What the hell
What's
is a
that?
website? You know? And so he said, look, I do this. If you give me like $500, I can do this for you. You need to take pictures of your product and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, cool. We're going to have a website. So so, so we built this website, resales.com, which was launched in 1996. And we had a very simple website that could somehow, I can't remember how it did, but you could buy on it. And we sold a few items and this and that. And we're like, okay, cool. This is starting to happen, you know? So we built our website in 1996. It's kind of funny how it was at the beginning of all of this stuff. And then we decided we were going to move to back to Newport and open up a retail store. So we had 10 grand in the bank. We had credit cards. I was a South African tourist visiting here. So she had a social security number and she had good credit. And so we basically just started the business on her credit, on her credit cards and all that stuff. And we went to Newport, Rhode Island, and I said for her to go ahead and find a big house with a big room so that we can like work out of it and we can still live in it, you know? So she came back, she found the place, we signed a lease, it was $500 a month. And so we then got in our little car with our U-Haul trailer, our one sewing machine, and our 3 patterns, and we trekked across to Newport, Rhode Island, and started like building a table, which I still have over there, the same original table, and started banging out these bags. Went and found a perfect shop, but they were asking for first, last, and security on the store, and the store rent was $3,000 a month. So we needed to come up with $9,000 to secure the space, and we just sat in the Starbucks, and we were like, "That's all we've got, you know. That's all we've got." So this is like February, and then it was cold, miserable winter, and we were just trying to figure it out, and we were trying to like build bags, and I was trying to build the bags, and I was trying to find people up in Fall River to make the bags, and then just this random call I got from this girl that worked at a sailing store, and she basically, her name is Missy Flanagan, and she said, "Hey, do you need a sewer?" And I was like, "Yeah, I need a sewer." She goes, "I've got this woman, Colleen, that's looking for a job. She just moved out from Utah. Her husband is a truck driver, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, call Colleen up. I said, "Hey, Colleen, can you sew?" She goes, "Oh, I can sew." So I went to Colleen's house, which is empty because they just moved there, and she had like one little homegrown sewing machine. And I was like, "You're going to sew on that?" She goes, "Yeah, well, I mean, I used to have industrial machines and so on and so forth." And then at the end of the day, I was like, "Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the pieces and you sew it. You just give me whatever." And she did. It came back perfect. And I was like, "Holy shit." So I said, you did that on that machine?" And she goes, "Yes." So I said, "Well, listen, I've got 2 machines in my studio apartment. Why don't you come and sew on those and we'll get you going, you know?" And so she did. And then we just started banging that stuff. And this woman still works for us today, 25 years later. She doesn't work here in Rhode Island. She has her own operation in Utah because she wanted to go back there, which we actually financed. And she is just, she's been an amazing find for us to keep us going. If you look over here, you can kind of see this is our loft.
Yeah.
You know, there's a bunch of people like sewing stuff.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
But so, you know, we've been we're a small company. We're not the biggest. And, you know, a lot of people have come on board to start what we do, have knocked us off exactly to the T. You know, there's many companies out there that do and I'm happy about it because it's more recycling. You know, it's like there's enough to go around. You know, I've had people that have worked for me that have gone out and started their own companies, and it's all good stuff. At first, I was a little like upset, but the grand scheme of things is that, you know, you have to make an effort on this planet with waste. You know, that's the key. I mean, and the sailing industry is so wasteful. Everybody's trying to figure it out, but it's like it's a long way to go. Sales is one little part of the equation, you know. So that's pretty much the gist of the story.
That's awesome. I love the story from two angles. I mean, obviously, as an entrepreneur, I love hearing stories where, you take this risk and you don't have, sometimes you have no clue what you're going to do, but you're like, it's an idea. I think there's something there. I can figure this out. And then the other side of it, to be passionate about making a difference, seeing something yourself personally, experiencing, seeing a sale and going, there's got to be a better way. So I love it. I think there's so many communities that are struggling with taking waste and what do you do with it? And if there's ways like you to make something better out of it and useful, I think that's a great story. So Christian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today and share your story. And I will put your website in the video link so people can learn more about you and more about your sales. And wish you all the best of luck.
Yeah, thanks so much for reaching out. Sorry it took a little bit of tweaking to understand exactly what you wanted, but it's cool. It's been great.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.